You're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that? You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people. They lynched people. They raped people. They enslaved people. They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen. And so don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. For God's sake, you want to do racist stereotypes? If it fit anywhere, and it doesn't. But if it fit anywhere, it would certainly fit white right-wingers in the South, who has hundreds of years of history of being savages.
You have African-American rappers saying N-word this and N-word that, but a Caucasian can't. So say it. Say what? Say the word you want to say. I'm not saying that I want to say it. I'm just saying that I can't. So you can. Say it. Say it right now. I will say it with you. Oh, this is hypocritical. You know we can't say it. All right, I think we can move.
Black people weren't allowed on Epstein's islands, yay! Except they would eat us and extract our melanin for riches and experiment on us and torture us and rape our children and our mothers and our men. Yeah, and then poison our communities and our media and our education and our music just to rebrand slavery so no one asks questions, because this isn't slavery. It's just a glamorized version of it. And then they sit back and watch and laugh as they give everyone the scraps in the shortest month of the year to celebrate our history that they rewrote and they ruined and they poisoned. Yeah. And then they just laugh as their indoctrination passes from generation to generation. What are people gonna do about it? We're not angry enough, but happy Black History Month, you guys. Happy Black History Month.
I remember when woke used to mean like a black person that was tapped in.
Until they stole it. Same as all those white thugs robbed rock, hip-hop, R&B, gold, silver, diamonds, chains, braids, fades, AVE, the invention of the traffic signal, light bulb, and refrigeration, the happiness of thousands of kids on the Middle East getting bombed, black people's dignities, the concept of black fatigue, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Mexico, South America, and the indigenous people's lands, and the whole continent of Africa. And I could go on, but I think y'all get the point.
I am white, and I was born into a white family with a racist white father who hated black people and used the N-word in his everyday vocabulary. My oldest brother, who ended up sexually assaulting me when I was 17 years old, his username on his laptop, or his password to his laptop, used to be DTAF, which was death to all, FAGS. Every single person in my family supports Trump actively and loudly. And even after being through all that, I am still smart enough and have my own head on my shoulders and can use my brain and do my own research to determine that all of those things are bad. I was raised to believe they weren't, and as I grew up, I realized that they in fact are. It doesn't matter what your family thinks or believes or who you come from, the world of opportunity at your hands.
What I hate about the whole whitewashing history, when they say, well, we shouldn't make little white kids feel bad. What the fuck? It's history. Why can't white kids learn about slavery, Native American genocide? I mean, why can't we teach that? Why is that bad? It's part of history.
There's this whole thing that is a part of the white experience. And it is that when something makes a white person feel uncomfortable, right, everybody shushes it up.
Right.
It's like, shh, no, let's not talk about that. And then when we talk about slavery, it's like, shh, no, that makes us
Hello brothers and sisters, how are you doing? I'm hoping that you are doing great from whenever you're watching this video from. Here we go again. We have a bunch of white people that are thinking that calling blacks, savages makes them to be, a group of better people. But I think the truth that people need to understand is that there is so much beneath the soil that we need to know. It's already Juneteenth. And we all know America is celebrating the emancipation of the last slaves, right? So this is what is happening. Some people might say that racism ended a long time ago, but racism didn't end a long time ago, because how we view racism today, it's not like we are having mass black shootings, like black people are getting, they're doing to black people the way they used to do in the past. No. We have something that we call decolonizing the mind, that some white folks still haven't decolonized their mind. They still believe that black people were savages and they were better than black people. But the truth is, these people are having this type of reasoning because of the cognitive bias that they have. Since they are white, they think they have established institutions that correct all the problems that are happening. But let me tell you the truth. In as much as they have well more established institutions, one of the biggest problems that we are having in the world today were caused by white folks. They are the ones that are causing the same damn problems that we are seeing today. And so, brothers and sisters, I really want us to watch this video. It is really enlightening because it's going to reveal to you how white folks think, and that thinking in the sense in how they view black people. It is really important that we get to analyze, talk about all these scenarios, and really get to understand what's really going on. In as much as we are talking about Juneteenth, we need to think about how still racism has not ended, even though there was emancipation that happened during June, when people try to commemorate the day in regards to a specific timeline in which all that happened. So brothers and sisters, I want us to watch this video, and then I'll be back. I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this. And if you're me for the first time, I'm asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to see what I can offer you. And for those who are always coming back, watching my videos, man, I'm really grateful for the support that you all are giving me. So until then, let's get into it. I'll be back with my thoughts and commentaries in regards to this. So let's watch the video. I'll be back.
I'm going to talk about slavery. I'm talking about American slavery of black people. For 400 years, by the way, it was 400 years. And you're probably thinking, I already know all about this. We talk about this in school. I don't need to learn anymore. Well, let me tell you, we actually don't talk about this in school. We don't talk about the truth of it. So let me tell you some things that I learned while researching this. And it's not that hard to research. You just have to look it up. So fact check me if you want, but here we go. First one I wrote down, you probably heard the term mother. Okay, and I'm not going to do any of that corny, grape stuff. I'm going to use the real words because those people deserve it. They deserve to not be graped or whatever the So, slave owners sometimes would force, this was a common occurrence, would force black men to rape their own mothers to publicly humiliate them and break their spirit. That's where the term comes from. The term mother comes from slavery and rape. I'm never going to use that term again. Once I found that out, I was so sick. Next up, the Atlantic slave trade, which we've all heard about, right? If you have a public education, hopefully you've heard about this. It was so much worse than we could ever possibly imagine. And I mean that. Certain ships were actually invented to make it faster so that the slave traders could get more of a profit because people were dying too quickly on the ships. They had special made masts that were much higher. They were the fastest and biggest ships so that they could make a higher profit because people kept killing themselves and dying. And now let me add on to that, people committing suicide because the conditions were so horrible on the ship. They hadn't even made it to slavery yet. They hadn't made it to the plantations. And they were still killing themselves because they knew how bad it was going to be. Sharks literally changed their migration patterns because bodies were just thrown overboard once they died. However, the Atlantic slave trade officially ended in 1808, right? That was the law that was put in by the early United States government. But do you think that stopped it? No. Let me talk about the reverse Underground Railroad. A lot of Southerners went up north and they had these gangs that would go and capture, they would kidnap black people. Even if they had never been a slave in their life, if they were escaped, no matter who they were, if you were black, they were going to try to kidnap you. They sold children, especially children, because they were easier to kidnap. It was just a big human trafficking thing. And it boggles my mind that we aren't, we don't really talk about this stuff in school, at least not at my school in Utah. And also, to counteract the end of the slave trade in 1808, you know what they did? They made breeding farms. And you can guess what that is. It was a rape farm. Girls as young as 13, I wouldn't be that shocked if it was younger, but at least girls and women as young as 13 were sent to special plantations that were exclusively made for breeding, making new people to enslave. And I also didn't know about this, and I don't know, I'm just fuming right now because, like, I knew it was bad, but, like, doing, like, a little bit of your own research makes you realize how horrible it was. Like so much worse than I ever imagined. Another one, you may have heard about this, but if you haven't, let me tell you, the white people, the slave owners, would use African American hair for cushions, for couches, for insulation. They pulled people's teeth that had pretty nice teeth, whatever. They would pull them and turn them into dentures and sell them to rich white people. And you know who had those dentures? George Washington. He had teeth pulled from his slaves to make his own dentures. No, his teeth were not wooden. That's a myth. His teeth were made from slaves' teeth. I mean, they turned their skin into leather. Another thing, they used these people as much as they could. It's horrifying. Obviously, they exploited them for labor. That's the one we all know. But they also used women in particular for fucking medical experimentation. Do you want to know the reason we know so much about women's gynecology? Is because of the human experimentation that happened to black women in the 1800s and before. Also, the sheer amount of that women had to endure from their masters or whatever, don't get me started, but the amount of rape that happened within, not just on plantations, but like during the slave trade, like during auctions, it's just so disgusting. I saw a study that said that 16% of all African Americans can trace their ancestry back to Europe. That is because of rape. 16% of all African Americans today. And this video is 5 minutes long. I've been talking for a minute. I haven't even scratched the surface on the cannibalism. It makes me so angry. And guess what? It didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation. That was a great start, but it didn't end. You really think those people that owned other people were just like, oh, well, it's illegal now. I guess I have to let you all go. No, that didn't happen. They kept their slaves. They weren't all just suddenly freed because the president told them they had to. Really, guys? And even the slaves that were freed, guess what? They underwent so much horrific stuff for the rest of their lives. The rest of their lives. People don't realize how common and how brutal and how horrific and depraved lynchings were. Like, it's so insane to me. Like, when people are like, why shouldn't I feel bad about this? I didn't own a slave. Well, look at your family history, guys. I looked at my family history. Because I'm really into family history, I had like my 5th great grandpa or something was from Kentucky, and his will says, to my son, I leave an African American girl, well, I think he said Negro, I don't want to say that word though, named Luda. And it just made me feel so disgusted at my own heritage. Like, the fact that people don't feel shame at all. People are like, oh, well, whatever, like, it's in the past. That bothers me so bad. And guess what? It isn't that far in the past. It's not that far in the past. The first black girl to go to an all-white school, she's younger than Trump. She has Instagram and TikTok. I don't know. I'm sorry I'm so heated. I probably just sound so stupid, but I'm just so disgusted right now. Just like thinking about it, and like I've written some stuff down. Just like, it just makes me so angry. It didn't end in 1863. It didn't end in 1865. Please, I want you to do your own research. I want you to find out as much as you can about this to understand how horrible it was, because we truly have no idea. Anyways, rant over. I hope I didn't word anything poorly, because I'm not thinking right now. I'm just kind of disgusted right now. So I hope that this wasn't too, sensitive. But yeah, that's it, guys.
Let me say that again. The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other. Before we figured out there were other people to kill, we just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people. Right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they've got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon, the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war. Right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Well, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like, how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I gotta charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens? When you go out on strike, who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer. Telling not rich white folks that their enemies are black and brown. And now we fast forward to the president. We got the president of the United States becoming president on the basis of that same rhetoric. Telling not rich white folks that the reason they don't have a job is because Mexicans took them, right? That's the argument. Keep in mind, there's been a net outflow of Mexican folks from this country, out of this country in the last 10 years. Right now, border crossings and actual in-migration at the lowest level they've been since the 1970s. So anybody who believes that is a damn fool, or somebody who does not understand how to do research on the internet, or someone who doesn't care, right? But he says the reason you don't have a job is those brown folks took them.
When you look at this side-by-side comparison throughout the bill, it reads like a how-to guide in historical whitewashing. Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the writings of Frederick Douglass?
I am.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the history of Native Americans?
The way the bill is laid out,
that's a yes or no question.
Because we were very clear that we could not be
conclusive
about every single document out there that we could. I'm going to give you an answer. This isn't a trial. I'm going to give you an answer.
Okay, I'm ready for the answer.
The way it's set out is so that a teacher can go to different documents in different authors by which to teach from. It's by no means meant to be a conclusive list.
Let me just ask you one more time. Are you aware that this new version of the bill from the Senate removes the history of Native Americans? It's on page 3 of the side-by-side if you don't have it in front of you.
Then I believe you.
Okay. Are you aware that this new version of the bill removes mentions of Cesar Chavez?
Yes.
Are you aware that this new version of the bill removes mentions of Susan B. Anthony?
Yes, I am.
Yet the new version of the bill from the Senate, this is not the bill we all passed as a House, but the Senate's version, it still includes the writings of Alexis de Tocqueville, and he's not even an American. Could that be because he's a white man?
History is teaching white Americans how white slave owners raped, beat, humiliated, mutilated, murdered, and cannibalized their slaves. Accurate history is teaching that George Washington's false teeth were made out of his slaves' teeth. Accurate history is teaching that Abraham Lincoln may have said some words and signed some shit, but he did not physically do anything to free the slaves. The white abolitionists also often get almost total credit for freeing the slaves. I bet you've never even asked yourself what the slaves were doing to free themselves, and the answer to that is most of the fucking work, including giving the ultimatum of war. But then we get a bunch of white people mad that their kids might feel guilty if we teach real history. It's not about your white child's feelings. Teaching accurate history isn't about white people's feelings, but that does sound like something that someone who's only ever been taught a white glorifying version of history would counter with. Ask why we ever felt like we needed to curate a false version of what white people did and did not do to black people to begin with. And then ask yourself why white-ass politicians are verbally attacking real history by calling it slurs, which is, by default, also the act of calling black people slurs.
My kid just asked why there's no White History Month. Good question. I'm glad you asked. Well, if you think about it, most of what we learn about history comes from a white perspective. When this country was founded, white people put themselves in charge. So who do you think was writing the history books and deciding what was important enough to remember? Yeah, white people. Of course, there were other people doing things and creating history during those times, but people of color were enslaved, denied rights, and intentionally shut down. Their stories just weren't listened to. So still today, every American learns about the founding fathers and other white leaders. We hear about brave white folks discovering the frontier, even though there were already people here. And a lot of the things around us, like roads and buildings and awards, are named for white people. Black History Month is special because it reminds us to keep learning more about history from perspectives we don't already hear and see every single day. The struggles and achievements of Black people are a huge part of our country's story, and we need to see the whole picture to understand our whole history.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great or doing super great from wherever you're watching this video. Now, I was really keen in what people are trying to share in regards to, this video. Well, I found important talking points. I found important comments in regards to this. Somebody said that a black woman was talking about our upbringing in the black households. As children, we taught specifically not to hate other groups of people. We couldn't even say the word hate. Same with lie. Though the worst was down to us, we weren't allowed to hate or lie in our communities. So we are allowed confused when others group of people question our morals and values. That's really common because when we get to see the values that black people are taught and the values that white people are taught, you get to realize that it's a little bit different. I think you get to understand that there are core values like integrity, telling the truth, community, all these things black people have thrived because of these things, right? And even the resilience that comes from the black community, they have learned it from a community aspect. Somebody came and say that they're still lynching people. Recently, a 10-year-old baby girl was missing for 10 days. They found her hanging. Police didn't do shit. Then before that, a man, I believe, was lynched in DC, according to the news or the information that was provided. All I like to say is that it's really sad that this is still happening, but I believe that there is a better way that all these things can be handled. There is a better way that all this madness people can do away with them, right? Somebody said that there are more than 52 million black people in the United States. How can you trust these statistics when you can't even trust and watch the censored and the controlled Fox News and others? It is really crazy because the people that have power decide on the type of information that you are going to have. And whether you're going to receive it or whether you're not going to receive it. All in all, what matters is that they want you to have that type of information that they want you to have, but they don't give a damn about you. Okay. Somebody also came and say that one of the biggest backfires of this regime schemes has been the surge of historical facts that are being amplified and magnified. In direct response to the regime's attack on educational systems that taught anything other than whitewashed version of American history. One could argue that deeds of the past can't be blamed upon living today, but the same regime has embodied today's bigots to speak openly and in doing so, prove that they entertain the same intentions as their predecessors. All of this exposed because bigots don't want to compete with people who don't look like them on an even playing field. If they were truly superior, they wouldn't be so frightened about, all these things that is happening. Somebody say that death is better than slavery. I'm sure 98% of black people agree. Wakanda or die. The Bible said plenty will be deceived. The ones who chose good, as in always staying on the right side of history, will be rewarded in every lifetime. And that's a fact. Really tell me what you think about this. Because all I've been trying to do is to try to expose all these lies that have always been said, that has always been taught about black people. So for the longest time, we are seeing the embodiment that the current generation of white people are having. Even though we're having a group of people that says that, racism ended a long time ago. And if you think that racism is just physical, it's more than physical. It goes deep into psychological racism. It goes deep into educational racism. All these things are psychological, and it's divided into two. Now, psychological racism or educational racism is in this sense. We still have people that believe, okay, the physical racism ended a long time ago, but the type of thinking that they have how their brain functions or how their brain sees black people really tells you that racism still exists, which means that they have still embodied what they did, their predecessors. They still embody each and every type of thinking that those groups of folks had before. Right? So somebody said that the history of America pertaining to the behavior that was inflicted on black people is so heinous and horrible that even they, the European, cannot bear. Don't even want to hear about it. It was about what they did for more than 400 years. Wow. God is love. Okay. I'm going to read. This is the second last comment that I'm going to be reading. You know why people feel bad and uncomfortable about their history? Because they didn't do anything to correct or fix things at that point. Black people had to fight for their own rights after white people did atrocities to them. And then, white people acted like black people were bad for being free. They gave them oppressive laws when it was impossible to visibly do this anymore. So instead of apologizing and trying to make things better, they tried to sweep it under the rug. Go to Germany and learn about Holocaust and how, they did actually acknowledge it and do reparation to the people they destroyed. So, yeah. Tell me what you think about this. This is the comment. This is the last comment that I'm going to be reading. No one ever taught me to be racist or to hate. I have always observed the world around me and how certain people are treated. And I always found that the reason why black people are always on the defensive is because they have to be, because everything in this country is designed against them. The Civil War might have set them free, but crimes against humanity towards black people did not end there. Whites are constantly stealing their ideas, their creativity, their use, their music, and their style, but hate them. Worst is that non-white races and cultures do the same, just to appease the one race that seems to hate every other race. Groups like Chinese, who benefited so much from the civil rights movements that black folk to get onto, only themselves. But for every people of color who was being excluded from bringing American dream, and yet Chinese are not grateful or say fu. If anything, they completely ignore this fact and put business in black neighborhoods, but can't stand black people. It's really crazy. So tell me what you think about this video. Tell me what you are feeling about this video. As you know, I'm your host and presenter Unique Stories. But until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.